could just start off with a little introduction about yourself, and then and we can go from there. Just for anybody who doesn't know you, which I mean, I'm just meeting you for the first time now as well, so it'd be valuable for me.
Not a problem. Well, I'm Rahul Faria. I own a commercial construction business, general contractor, construction manager. Offices in Georgetown, but just like most GCs, we work pretty much everywhere.
Right.
I've been in the construction field now for 18 years. 18 years. Started out doing co-op and stuff like that with the University of Waterloo. So that's been my kind of experience getting into it. With my business, I did a little bit of residential and commercial, and then now finally completely switched over to just commercial the last couple of years.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that you know, in your experience, you'd worked with a couple of the bigger GCs. What kind of so what are the scale of commercial projects that you're working on mostly right now?
For us, I mean, we're on the smaller side, right? We're a small business essentially.
Right.
So our projects can range anywhere from 150,000 to about 800,000-900,000 per project.
Okay.
Just depends on the size, scope of the work. We mainly do restaurants, so
Nice.
those have been directly impacted. We do some office spaces, but 70-80% of our work are restaurants, full serve, sit down kind of thing. So I know they're hurting just as much as we are. So it's been a tricky time to navigate through everything, but that's generally the size and scope of work.
Right.
And
Awesome.
any GC can tell you the revenue per year just varies. You get one big job, you blow your last year's projections out the water, right?
Right.
And you miss out on a couple, and it lowers it down, right? So, yeah.
Right. Yeah, I actually, because of the work that I do with Avina, the financing group that I work closely with, I'm pretty familiar with the woes of the hospitality industry right now. They work on a lot of the hotel projects, financing, development, and so things are definitely changing there. I think the big question is, how do we, I think most people want to try and figure it out, but the question is, how do we model a recovery here? Like, when do we get to guess that things are going to return to normal, right?
Oh, that's the ever popular question, right?
Right.
I mean, even if we're talking to, I don't just rely on myself because I don't know the answers. And, frankly, if anybody actually knows the answers, they're lying. They don't know.
Yeah.
So, all you can do is, just like any entrepreneur, any business, you got to look at your best and worst case basis, right? You got to prepare for both. So for me, from my side, I'm looking at let's say from today, like April 1st, I'm looking at least a 2 to 3 month kind of lockdown, shutdown, kind of where we're at, because projects are slowing down, up to like 10 months to a year.
Right.
We don't know if there's going to be a second wave. We also don't know, even if in 4 or 5 months, stuff starts to get better, will people have the money? Will they want to spend the money?
Right.
How the bank's are they gonna lend? Are the restrictions gonna be tighter or lower? Are supplier costs gonna raise because now they've lost out? Will labor prices go down? We just don't know at this point, right? So you got to look at it as a short term, and then prepare for the worst case as a long term, and kind of dig your heels in, unfortunately.
Yeah, I know. I feel like a lot of people, like some of the sentiment that I've heard is, a lot of people are just thinking we're going to rebound from this almost instantly. But I think a lot of people are really discounting for how long it's going to take for the economy to recalibrate all of those variables that you just described, right?
And you know what? This is something that we made the decision about a week and a half ago to shut down our sites for at least 2 weeks.
Right.
I was finding, much like a lot of other contractors out there, GCs and subcontractors, we started implementing some health and safety protocols that we thought were good. I mean, we don't have direction as of yet, detailed from Ministry of Labor or anything like that. And we found that a few people thought it's a hoax. A few people thought, like you said, it's gonna just pass over. I try to tell them I have family all across the world. Dubai, India is in a lockdown. Dubai, you need permits to leave your house. So this is all, like, everyone sees Europe, and now you see the numbers in the US. So it's just one of those that for me, I'd rather err at the side of caution.
Yeah.
When we made that decision, it was, I didn't make it unilaterally. I kind of spoke to my clients as well, because there's a lot of ambiguity out there in the marketplace, right?
Yeah.
Health and safety concerns of the guys, number one. Number two is payments on invoices, right?
Right.
Do the clients who own other retail spaces or businesses or investments, are they going to have the money to spend? And then are we going to deal with lawsuits after, legals? And
Right.
there's just so much ambiguity that I just thought, let's take a breather for a couple of weeks and kind of shot them some projections for the next couple of months and said, you know what, like, really look at this, because we're all in the position, we're all in the same boat. You guys, us, our subs, our employees, everyone's hurting right now. So we all need to make sure we're working collaboratively together. That's the only way to get out of this.
Yeah, I know. It seems like the industries that come to terms with that need for collaboration earlier are the ones that succeed more promptly, and the ones that are working their way out of this now. So that, I mean, you gave me a pretty good idea of how things are changing at your company.
Yeah.
What about for you as an individual? Like, has your workday changed, and if so, how?
Oh, completely,
Three.
completely. I mean, before this kind of, went that little exponential stage.
Yeah.
Much like every other person, I can mainly speak for entrepreneurs or business owners as well. Running after that rat race, right? Wake up, push,
Yeah.
try to get sales, try to make sure your staff is motivated. Limit some of the mistakes, because we're all humans. We make mistakes. We just, sometimes you feel like there's not enough hours in the day. And even if there were 30 hours in the day, you'd still be complaining there's not enough hours in the day. So that's how it was before. I mean, I just had a kid last year. He's 15 months.
Congratulations.
So he was in daycare. So I'd wake up, take him to daycare, come back,
Yeah.
get started on my day at, like, I was waking up at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, I know it.
Right?
I know the feeling. I
You
do
know
the
the
same
feeling,
thing.
right? So, and then push, and then now it's changed, because I can't remember the last time I woke up at 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, to be honest with you.
Right.
But I'm waking up at 6:37 when he wakes up,
Yeah.
hang out with him for a bit. My wife looks after him for a little bit.
Yeah.
Her sister is staying with us as well. So, we kind of take turns,
Nice.
looking after them. But, for me, the one nice part is you get to sit back, for me, I get to look back at my 7 years, because, I'm constantly beating myself. I could have made this decision right, this decision differently, whatever. Get to look back and see, I'm not doing too badly. You know what I mean? Made some mistakes, some ups, some downs, not doing too badly. And I'm getting to focus more on, making sure my clients are good, my subs are good, my suppliers are good, they're healthy. I've had ideas about pet projects, like side stuff to do for a long time. So I'm getting to work on some of those stuff that I've just been putting off, right? So I've been in touch with more of my family across India and stuff, because now I'm not, like I said, in that rat race, right? I think the biggest thing, though, and I think everybody should be aware of this, is, we're always, like you said, we're always complaining about things, right?
Yeah.
And I think now we're at the point where we're starting to understand really what matters to us and what's important.
Yeah.
So my hope is, when we get out of this, regardless if it's business or family or personal hobbies, we know what we're going to stress about. We know what we want to push, and we want to go after and actually put that extra time into, not just because we want the nice car. Like, the nice cars now, you can't even really drive anywhere. So, you know what I mean? Like, just the things that matter to each individual or each business. I hope they realize what's important to them.
Yeah.
So that they can really focus on that going forward. That's my one hope, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, regardless, I guess, of your belief system, this is definitely the universe is something is happening in nature, on Earth, that's communicating something back to us. And I think you're in most cases, I don't know if you can learn from history, you're often best to not ignore those things. So,
it's funny. My wife is very spiritual, right? And sometimes she says, maybe this is, and it's a popular train of thought right now. I'm sure you see it all on your feeds, right? Maybe this is Earth telling us to slow down. You know what I mean? It could be. I was talking to Adam yesterday, and he was saying, in just conversation came up that we've been such a need-driven society.
Yeah.
And for once, we're in the history, probably we have to think about the other person just as much as ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
We're being forced to, to consider your fellow man. I
Consider
mean,
the other
it's,
person.
yeah, it
Yeah,
very much becomes necessary for our survival too. Right.
that's
So,
right. That's right. Yeah. So it's an interesting time to say the least.
yeah, a welcome change for me. I mean, I felt fortunately very prepared for this, so I'm grateful in that respect. But it's interesting to do this and talk to other people and get an idea for the experiences of everybody else as this whole
Right.
thing progresses. How about the industry that you're in? How has that changed?
Oh man, it's ambiguous just like everything else. But
Right.
what I've noticed from talking to subs is the way contract like GCs or construction manager are operating. They're very similar to how they operated before. By that I mean there's a certain segment of companies that have always put a big onus on health and safety of the people on site, make sure everything is safe. There
Right.
was whatever potable water, that kind of stuff. And there are others that you know can stand on the top step of a ladder and they're not going to say anything. They just want to get the work done, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And what I find generally that those same things have held through now from what I'm hearing. The companies that focused on the safety are very specific about their implementations of certain safety protocols and sanitization.
Right.
And there are other companies that are just like, no, just go. We're an essential service. Let's just go.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that was never going to change. I think it's a company's philosophy at the end of the day. But there's quite the bit of ambiguity out there. I mean, Doug Ford coming out and saying, our premier saying that construction was an essential service as a blanket statement, and even as a separate line saying that retail, residential are an essential service, really didn't do any favors, especially with his follow-up comment saying that any trades on site, anyone who doesn't feel comfortable should leave. And while
Right.
I get that, people have their fears. They watch the news. So, how do we as contractors or subcontractors hold to construction schedules,
Right.
right? How do we make sure that there's a 6 foot radius between people? I mean, national labor guidelines say 2 people have to be working side by side to
Right.
help pick up a drive. So there's a lot of ambiguity when it comes to a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
But I think now people are starting. What I'm hearing is sites are starting to slow down because people don't want to go on project sites much anymore.
Right.
They're actually getting a lot, not necessarily that they're going to get it, but even if they get it, that they have to go home and they're with their families or their
Yeah.
moms or you know what I mean, that
Yeah.
their in-laws that they live with, and they're afraid of passing it on to somebody who might be more vulnerable. So it's a little bit challenging out there in the market right now to really get clarity.
Right.
We're members of the OGCA, the Ontario General Contractors Association, and they've been on top of things a fair bit, they sent a letter to Doug Ford talking about a lot of things that people don't talk about. Force majeure clauses. I'm not sure if you know what those are.
Yeah, we saw
Active
a couple of
time.
those,
Yeah,
happening in the hotel space lately.
right. So just to eliminate holdback releases, right? Is the construction act for payments, is that still hold because they've suspended all of that? So how do you navigate through this? You can't.
Yeah.
What I mean, and I get it. I get that the headlines are always big.
Yeah.
But the details always have to be worked out after, much like the wage subsidy, right?
Mhm.
The 75 wage subsidy. Oh man, everyone was pumped.
Yeah.
Everyone was pumped, right? The subs are like, you know what? Awesome. I'm going to get help. My clients were pumped. We're going to flow through it. It's going to stimulate the economy. And then how do you project 30% loss of revenue
Right. Right.
over the year, right? So
Yeah.
I'm sure they're working through the details and trying to figure all that out. But again,
Yeah.
everything's a moving target day by day, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then the other part is trying to quantify the actual impact of businesses that can't operate right now, or can't operate at their fullest capacity. I mean, you're seeing a lot of retail restaurants, et cetera, trying to get by with the delivery models, last mile,
Yeah.
et cetera. But um, you know, I don't think that their financial statements are going to look the same after a quarter of doing
No,
that. resources. So, and I think that,
Yeah,
yeah, the market seems to be trying to price that in right now.
yeah,
So we'll see.
yeah. I think so too. Yeah, obviously the revenues will drop, but if the goal was to hire back all of the employees,
Hmm.
how can you do that if you're only doing takeout or delivery, right?
Right.
You don't have servers, you don't have hostess. Like I'm talking about from restaurants and hospitality that I look after, right? So
Yeah.
it's like I think everyone's plans are changing day by day, and that's important to be versatile. I mean, construction's well, it's the oldest, right? Everyone's stuck in their ways, right?
Yeah.
So it's really hard to switch directions. But right now, you have to be versatile and adapt on the fly.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that the necessity of that, the agility and willingness to adapt is becoming a lot more clear. And I think it'll ultimately determine who's going to come out on top of this. Beyond, I mean, it's too late to prepare, obviously, right? So now that we're all in reactionary mode, it's who can react the best. I suppose that's going to determine the outcome.
Yeah.
And I know you mentioned the word ambiguity a lot, so this might be a more difficult question for you
Sure.
to answer, but do you expect that things are going to change more or kind of stay the same as they are, or they'll go back to normal, or is that a tough one to read? Like if it was,
I think
where
this. I
does the
mean,
outcome look like?
I think it depends on really how long this is going to last, right?
Yeah.
Because we're all creatures of habit at the end of the day. We've all been traveling South America, me and India. You're like, oh, I can see, I'm going to be more grateful, right? But then you're gone for 2 weeks and you come back and you get back into, I got my mortgage, you got my hydro, and
Yeah.
you get back into your flow. But I think the longer this goes, I do think people's mindsets are going to change, right? Because they have to. Just look at um, Zoom, like what we're talking about now.
Yeah.
Um, I know me as an owner was always hesitant to go to a mobile setup because it maybe relinquishes that control that you can just go walk over and check on somebody.
Yeah.
But companies are forced to do that now. They're forced to trust their team to see what they're doing because just to operate, right? We were lucky enough. We decided last year to move to a mobile operation anyway.
Nice.
So December we all went to a mobile operation because construction, right? I mean, we've got project managers on site in the office. Our site guys always on site.
Yeah.
Estimators are in and out. So we just said, you know what? How can we best reduce our overhead and pass that on to clients as well at the same? So we already started on that path. Obviously, like you said, reactionary. So we had to speed up the learning curve a little bit.
Yeah.
Once this came up and actually implement daily talks and stuff like that, daily meetings and so on and so forth. But I think the longer it goes, the longer it's going to change.
Right.
My hope is that people do take more care on site in terms of safety. There's
Yeah.
a lot of, I mean, there are a lot of places where people cut corners. I
Yeah.
mentioned standing on the top step of a ladder and stuff.
Yeah.
But I think generally speaking, people will change the way they do things. In terms of physical construction, really, there's not much you can really change, right? I mean, you need people. I don't think the computer or machine building thing is there quite yet. I know we've seen some videos about that, but I don't
Yeah.
think it's quite ready to be implemented. But in terms of on-site stuff, I don't think stuff is going to change so much. But I do think in the background, operationally wise, the back of house stuff, I think the way people operate is going to change a lot more because
Yeah.
they're just going to make more efficient use of their time instead of driving here, driving there for meetings. They're just going to set up, Zoom calls, Zoom meetings to collaborate the best, right?
Yeah. 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 It
Yeah.
might ultimately translate to a little bit of a greater leveraging of technology and efficiency, especially with the generations that weren't really now they've had to, out of necessity, adapt and learn some of these technologies, whereas
Yeah,
in the past they weren't at all, right?
that's right.
Are you seeing any changes, and this could be even prior to this, but do you think that there's a chance that we'll see any changes in the structure of the stuff that you're building as a result of this? So like maybe greater, and I don't know if you're doing this already, but like an example would be, some of the new towers that they're building,
Mhm.
Toronto would have an extra entry for the Airbnb units. So like the the condo building's lobby isn't like a hotel room every weekend, right?
Right,
So like
right.
just that's how the building is adapting to that environment. Do you suspect that on the way out of this, restaurants sort of getting more into that delivery thing as a survival mechanism could translate to a change in structurally our state of
Um,
man?
you know what? That could potentially be separate, like takeout stations that are kind of, so they don't have to come inside the restaurant and stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but with restaurants as well, I'm not as exposed with hotels and stuff, but restaurants, be it, a sit down restaurant or a quick serve style, I mean, their margins aren't that high.
Right.
So I don't believe, unless, it's a new concept and somebody's willing to take a chance to see how it will work, that we would see that much change. Like I said, we're all creatures of habit, right? And if something's been
Yeah.
working for so long,
Yeah.
because people will just point to something like this, what we're going through right now. When's the last time it's happened? So do I really need to prepare for that 100,000-year event kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Some people will say yes. Some people will want to create something separately just so that their regular operations aren't impacted.
Yep.
But again, social interaction for most of these restaurants, hospitality is key, right?
Right.
Just to make sure service is there, quality is there, that sort of stuff. So I don't think we'll ever get away from that completely.
Right. Yeah.
The only thing you'll get away is like the Foodora apps or Uber Eats, where they'll come and pick up and deliver. But I don't foresee that side of thing changing. Obviously, unless the government doesn't mandate some sort of change, right?
Right,
So,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, I was just curious because like sometimes I've just found that, especially in the urban context, some of these smaller retail spaces that are accommodating your sort of local commercial tenant, I've noticed it's very cluttered when there's orders coming in and out, and sort of
Yep.
when this first started happening, when some of the restaurants were still open, you were seeing a lot of that delivery stuff happening.
Right.
It was chaotic, and I was just curious as to whether or not the layout, even prior to this, was changing to accommodate for things like Uber Eats, like to having a third party delivery service, because they basically just go in right through the front, right, and
Just
stand
pick
in
it
the
up.
front.
Right.
Yeah.
Uh, to be honest, that always has an impact. If they've got a separate entrance, let's just say in a restaurant perspective, right?
Yeah.
That's either taking up valuable retail space for people sitting down, or valuable space for storage of food or prep or something like that. Right? So I don't know if you'll ever fully get away from that unless you have standalones like a drive-through model.
Yeah. Or like those ghost kitchens that Adam and I were talking
right.
about, right?
Yeah, that's the other option with ghost kitchen, but then you're not really doing the sit-down style, right? So I don't know if that'll really come into play. I mean, Toronto and urban developments are so tightly packed as it is. Where do you create a second one, right?
Yeah. On that note, actually, on the topic of urbanization, before we pivot to more of the advice side of things, do you think, like, from your perspective, does there seem to be a changing sentiment about urbanization? And I think you had mentioned that your family's in India, so I'd be curious to have like a global context there as well. But like, I mean, I think we're like, at least from some of the seniors that I've spoken with, the Ipsos released a poll recently that most of them wanted to move out of urban areas anyway, and were more preferential to retiring in suburban or rural communities. But do you think that do you think that the cracks are starting to show in this extreme density?
No, I don't think so.
No, I would agree. I was just curious.
I don't think so. At the end of the day, I live downtown Toronto for 15 years, right? We decided to move out. We moved to Georgetown because we had a family, right? And we wanted to get out of that hustle and bustle. But there are a lot of people that want to stay downtown, close to everything, close to sporting events, close to live music, pubs, restaurants, the variety, because that's just their lifestyle. I don't think that's like this is really going to change any of that.
Right.
We have the same issues here. We might be in a house a little bit more separated, but again, we still need to drive. We need to fill up our tanks. It might be taking a little bit longer to fill that up, but we still have to pay for insurance. We still have to. You live in an urban area, you might not need a car. So you're saving on all those costs. So I think those are balances that are always going to be asked with each individual person or family on what their lifestyle choices are at the end of the day. So I don't know if that is really something. In India, Dubai, like I mean, there's strange places.
Right.
because they're so dense. The
Yeah.
populations are so dense
Yeah.
that even though you can say that's downtown Mumbai or
Yeah.
downtown Dubai, every pocket is so densely populated that
Yeah.
it really doesn't matter. Like you have to drive places to go, even in the city, just because of how busy it is.
Right.
So I don't know if it'll change so much in, I guess they call them developing countries,
Right.
as it would in a first world country. I think people are still going to make the same decisions regardless.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny because I kind of laughed to myself when I was having a dialogue with somebody about that Ipsos report, just basically saying like,
Yeah.
yeah, if that means anything to me, it basically just tells me that, the suburban concept has basically 20 years to figure out how to urbanize. And then once the boomers that want to move there start dying off, then basically, the remaining unless some drastic change happens. But yeah.
But
Okay.
but hey, if you look at how things are going anyway, everything's just spreading,
Yeah.
right? Like Toronto's
Yeah.
just becoming bigger. It's
Yeah.
like any place when they keep growing. Like even Georgetown, next thing you know, we'll be in with Milton and
Yeah.
Brampton,
Yeah.
and basically we're just going to be a network
Yeah.
of roads and hopefully transit as well to get around, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, they're definitely accomplishing some pretty good stuff. At least up where I am, like
Yeah,
Newmarket area will be transit connected all the way
yeah,
to Finch Station with the new BRT line they're putting on
yeah.
Beach Street there.
I think Kitchener's done some amazing things with
Yeah,
the light rail transit as well, with the
yeah,
train system over there as well. So
yeah,
it's coming. It's
yeah,
coming. It's just time, right?
for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
What kind of advice are you offering to people that you work with? The subs that you're working with, clients, people like me, like
Yeah.
with when somebody comes to you and asks how you're dealing with this or how you would recommend that they do. Is there any advice that you can give to people in
I
your
mean,
area or beyond?
I think it's not advice necessarily. I think I mentioned that word earlier, collaboration, right? It's
Yeah,
just collaboration of ideas at the end of the day, because other people experiencing similar but maybe slightly different things. So just getting different people's perspective on what they're doing. But I think from a business perspective, like say a business, like a construction company to a construction company or client, looking at it from that macro level.
hmm
I think that everyone needs to literally take a pause and take a deep breath, because, like I said, the last thing we want to do is get into a situation where we're putting on-site trades and our team at harm's risk, with their families as well at risk. We don't want to overextend on money. Subcontractors, unfortunately, they take the biggest burden because they buy all the materials, right?
right.
And then if they have to carry that in addition to their staff and their team with payroll and stuff, it can get pretty challenging, right? So
Yeah,
I think the best thing we did was, what I told them is best to take a pause and, come up with a plan for sustainability at the end of the day, right? I mean, you want to come out of this. Everyone wants to make money. Everyone wants money coming in, right?
yeah,
Especially now. But the best thing to do is take a pause for a week, maybe 2 weeks, and come up with a proper plan, be it personal or business wise. What are my costs? Like, where can I cut? What do I actually need? Where actually do I don't need? You know what I mean? Like, and really start making those hard decisions. As an owner of a company and as a leader, shall we say, sometimes we have to make the tough decisions. It's not always everybody's input. Sometimes we just have to make that tough decision for the best of everybody at the end
right.
of the day, right? So I think just that communication with everybody to make sure everyone's clear on expectations, on roles and responsibilities, and more importantly is, make sure that everyone's safe at the end of
Yeah,
the day and healthy, right? Like that's what we all need to get out of this, right? Is we all need to get out of this, safe and healthy, with as minimal impact as we can, and what better way to do it than just keeping in touch, taking pauses, making sure that you know whatever latex gloves that you've ordered is coming 2 weeks from now, then you wait. You
yeah,
don't just keep pushing on site because of
yeah,
the
yeah,
shortages, right?
yeah.
Just and have your clients understand that,
hmm
and have your trades understand that as well, because we're all in this together at the end of the day.
Yeah, yeah. That seems to be a theme. Like with what you were saying at the beginning is having these discussions with both the clients and the subs is almost trying to figure out what a mutually beneficial solution looks like, right? And if that means, I guess right now it means putting a pause on things because, if you do perpetuate and somewhere in that supply chain, money stops flowing, right? Like the capital
Right.
flows. if the client at the very end of it ends up, runs out of money, or comes across a force majeure or whatever
Right.
happens in the
Yeah.
financing, then you're on the hook to still pay the sub, who's still on the hook to pay his guys. And
That's
I
right.
think a lot of people maybe aren't appreciative of the payment terms, your 30, 60-day
Yep.
stuff in that
Yeah.
industry. And I think that it's smart that you're being anticipatory. I would hope that, that's one of my biggest complaints about my industry, especially like in the investment sales side, is that things are just going and going and going, because we're on that, your 45-day sales cycle, right? So we haven't really
Right.
even, like, this news hasn't even made its way into the
Uh,
valuation and into the
right.
purchase and sale
Yeah.
until you get your next
Yeah.
round of closings.
Yeah.
And I think that to me is a little bit concerning, especially when you have brokers just out there just pumping people to go and keep buying. The market's hot or whatever, and it's like,
You know what? It's no different. I'm surprisingly, I'm still getting invited to a fair number of tenders for projects. Quick
right,
serve and retail spaces, because landlords just saying, "Hey, your fixturing period is starting April 1st or May 1st,"
yeah,
right? Because again, they've not gotten breaks from the government as of yet,
yeah,
right? So it all rolls downhill, right? So you feel for everybody at the end of the day, but everyone's trying to make the best decisions as they can,
yeah,
given the circumstances. You can always push, you can always get pricing and that sort of stuff. The one thing that people never think about too is, if these payments start getting delayed now, me as a GC, once this is lifted, has to get back on a project site. Do I really
yeah.
think a subtrade is going to jump back on if they're waiting 6 months for money? Because
That's
they
the part
operate
that
in good
that's the
faith.
part that's really captured my curiosity is like, I think that the startup again after this is all said and done is going to be just as painful as the shutdown, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, my trades are wondering if they'll get their same guys back if they lay them off.
Right.
Is there going to be a market glut? Are they going to be? Can they ensure the quality? Can they not? Like, are
Right.
people going to be overriding the marketplace with labor? Like, again, we're all just scratching the surface right now, and it's all ifs, what ifs, and when at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, that's why I've found it to be really helpful to just talk to as many people as I can right now and capitalize on all the
Yeah.
time that we have on our hands, because I've tried to formulate my own opinions as much as I can. And
Yeah.
the best that I could do, a month and a half, 2 months ago, was as much research as possible about this and preparing myself financially. But now that I've done that, and I'm blessed to have enough time and resources to be able to add value to the lives of others, it's just figuring out what everyone's perspective is, and then somewhere within the aggregate of all of that is the truth, and things will probably go.
Or it'll be way off because we don't know. These
I
are
know.
unprecedented times, right? So
Yeah, I know.
it's not like, I mean, we always lean on experience, and this is what we've done in the past, and it's tried, tested, and true. But we've not, be it H1N1 or SARS, like, it was never like this, right?
No,
Like,
it's never like this.
so this is uncharted territories, right? Like I said, what you're doing is awesome. You got to talk to people, spread different ideas. No one's right, no one's wrong. You know what I mean? They're just concepts, ideas, and opinions.
Yeah,
And again, biggest thing, be versatile. Don't be closed-minded. A
yeah,
lot of
for
people
sure.
can be closed-minded about their views. You got to be versatile and open-minded.
Yeah,
This thing is changing by the hour. Forget the week,
for sure, for sure.
right? Yeah.
Um, I actually just posted an interview with somebody who does something similar to you, but more on the residential side.
Right.
And so they're sort of trying to get by with, just exterior work and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that, and keep some of their sites going, and keeping
Yeah.
the guys who still want to work working. Is there any advice that you can give to, people within your industry as well, on, or like, is there any guidance on, even if it's just as much as, how is the process of actually deciding to take that 2 weeks off?
Right.
How's that been for you? And
Listen, it wasn't
for
an easy
anyone else
decision.
considering it?
It's not an easy decision for contractors or any business owners to make, because at the end of the day, me as a GC or construction manager, it not just has a direct impact on my team, but subcontractors and their employees, and
Yeah.
there's that trickle down effect, right? So it's not something that that you should take lighthearted, right? Guys do want to work on the project side for sure, 100%. But again, make sure you got your sanitization plan in order. Make sure that The clients aren't coming out to critique and, touching surfaces, just like little things like that go a long way.
Yeah.
We actually send out a basic COVID, health and safety kind of thing to all of our subs. Make
Right.
sure that their manager or the direct supervisor signs it and every worker signs it.
Mm-hmm.
We've implemented daily toolbox talks on every single aspect of this COVID-19. Make sure everyone is aware, the hand soap is under lock and key
Right.
because they have disappeared from project sites that we take back every day. Make sure, what, at the end of the day, you just got to make sure that if your guys are working on a project site, or if you're a tradesman working, make sure that your surroundings are safe. More so, not just fall arrest and a harness and no proper scaffold, but make sure that you have the other tools to make sure you've cleaned up properly, right? Maybe that involves having a change of clothes in the car, so when you get to the job site you change and then you change back, so you're not tracking it back. You do quick wipe down of your car and your area that you're in. Little things like that help if you are still going to the project site. But again, the more we go out, the more potential issues may arise, right? We don't realize the number of things we touch, parts of our body, face, ears, neck that we touch on a daily basis, right? The number of surfaces we might lean on or put our hand on, will we remember that we've touched a certain area of a scaffold if you're doing something on the exterior? That's really hard. So if you're going to sanitize, you got to make sure you take time to sanitize, right? So it's a challenging time, right? And if you're the biggest thing I'll say is, if as a business owner, if you are taking those sanitization steps, make sure your client is aware that there are extra costs if you're charging to pay them, because you never want to surprise a client with costs. All of a sudden they're expecting a $100,000 bill, but it's a 120 because you had to hire a sanitization company every day. Those unforeseens, that's where that, again, communication at the end of the day, it's always just being aware of your surroundings, making sure you've got the proper stuff to keep yourself safe and healthy, and clean. Get back home, shower. Like even now, if we go get groceries, you come back, first day, jump in the shower. That's it. Jump in the shower, wash yourself down, body wash, whatever. At least you're clean. Right? We're still figuring it out. So
it sounds like you're doing a lot to and one of your big motivations behind this is really being fair and protective to your human capital, which seems to be a big sticking point in the media and with a lot of the stuff going on in the city with these job sites. What do you think about some of these disputes that are happening with, I've just heard a lot about, guys not wanting to stay on site, and, a lot of the trades are pissed off that they're not I guess they're not feeling like their health and safety is being prioritized on a political level. And I don't want to get too political, but what do you anticipate is going to happen there? Do you think that ultimately a lot of those
I have a feeling
have to go your direction?
Yeah, I think that one of two things will happen, or both will happen. Ministry of Labor has to come out with some specific guidelines of requirements on a project site. It's not enough just to say, stand 6 feet apart and make sure there's potable. You know what I mean? Just like everything else, there's got to be something more concrete, more specific.
For sure.
So that, not just GCs like us, so even subcontractors know what they're getting into. It's easy for a client to tell me as the prime contractor, to make sure everybody's safe. And it's easy for me to pass that down to a subcontractor and say, make sure if you're sending guys that they've got gloves and a mask. But it's not as easy as just putting that as a direction, right? So I think that's one thing that has to happen. I do think that I have a feeling that maybe by this week or next week, they'll do a mandatory pause on construction activities that aren't related to hospitals or, emergency work on bridges or, that kind of, serious kind of stuff. I do think a pause is going to come because there's just so much uncertainty. I know you mentioned the human capital and stuff. You know, I realized a little while ago that I'm only as good as my trades on site and my team around me, right?
Yeah.
I can't do it all. So I try. I mean, like I said, decisions I make might not be popular with everybody, unfortunately, but I try to keep that in mind
Yeah.
whenever we're doing anything. It's unfortunate because, you know, a site super on a large condo, and I'm sure we've seen that video, right? If that guy
Yeah.
yelling
Yeah.
and everybody's got to go home. I feel for that, right? Because even as a site super is on the job site, maybe he's not getting the proper support from. Maybe he's not getting the proper support from his office. Right?
Yeah.
Maybe he's not getting the proper support from his office, right? And so on and so. And maybe his office can't find the equipment,
Right.
but the client wants to push. I mean,
Right.
you know, it's like I said, it's hard. I mean, you know, for me, it's on a personal story. Like I was deemed as an essential service, so my daycare said that they'll still keep charging me because I'm an essential service. And other
Really?
people might be, yeah, other
Huh.
people might be in a same situation. You know, we've obviously talked through it now and made arrangements and stuff because you don't want anyone to suffer in this environment, but everyone's going through stuff.
Right.
The problem though in any industry, it's the trickle down effect, right? The labor on a construction site is probably, you know, always the last one to be thought about
Yeah.
at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But that's where strong leadership comes in.
Yeah.
Honestly, and I'm talking about from a subcontractor. Subcontractors should be telling their guys to leave the job site if they're not feeling safe and provide notice, right? And so
Yeah.
on and so forth. I mean, unfortunately, you have to do these things in this environment, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know. Like I think this time, this climate that we're in is really showing some of the true colors of people.
For sure.
You know, the clients who say, no, I don't care, you got to push.
Yeah.
You know, they're not they're looking only after themselves, right? Or the GCs do the same thing. Oh, a client is working with you. Okay, they understand, right?
Yeah.
They understand the situation. They're, everyone says, you know, he talks a good game. He talks a good game. We'll see what he's about. This
Right.
is the time where people are really noticing
Yeah.
what people are about. We've seen in the news the hand sanitizer costing $25 and stuff.
Yeah.
People have long memories, man. They're gonna remember that stuff. They're gonna remember who are the people that are trying to, you know, make a ton of money off the backs of us
Right.
in general.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I have the same philosophy on that, and most of the people that I've been speaking with have a similar philosophy. But then, you know, I'm pretty active on Twitter, and a lot of the guys that I speak with there are, you know, no, some people seem to think that, you know, anybody who's, especially in my space, like, you know, real estate brokers who are putting things on hold are virtue signaling, and that nobody's going to remember that when it's all said and done. Nobody's going to give a shit. And I don't know. I mean, I guess for me, it's sort of a Pascal's wager in such that if I come across somebody who didn't care and felt that I was virtue signaling during this time, I probably would not want to work with them anyway. So it actually it creates a nice selection bias for the clientele that I want to work with. But anyway,
You know
I
what?
guess time will tell, right?
That's a good point. But you know, you have to keep in mind too, there are a lot of people that maybe haven't built their business up or don't have that luxury to be selective with their clients.
Right.
Right?
For sure.
I mean, that's just how it is, right? I mean, sometimes people just take a job because they have to, take a contract because they have to.
Oh, I would say
They
more
don't have
often
a
than
choice,
not.
right? So then those, you know, your principles go out the window. I mean,
For sure.
I'm in your shoes too. You know, a couple of years ago was the first time I actually said no to a client, and I was pretty surprised at myself, right? But I mean, it takes time to figure that out and figure out who you really want to work with. That's your best, you know, that's your best thing. But there's always going to be people. There's always the exception to the rule. We get out of this, maybe everyone changes, but there's always going to be the exception to the rule, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything else you want to add before we sign off?
No, you know, I think what you're doing is great. You know,
Thanks.
just spreading the awareness of what's going on from different people in different industries. But I mean, it's nothing different than I've said before. Whether you're a business owner, client, developer, or employee, or you know, we're all in the same spot. We're all hurting in different ways on different levels.
Yeah.
And you know, just having that open conversation. You know, if you're a renter, have that conversation with your landlord. You know, if you're
Yeah,
a landlord, have the conversation with your renter. If you're
for
a
sure.
contractor, have the conversation with your trades and your clients, and vice
Yeah,
versa, right? I mean,
yeah,
communication now is so important, right? And with Zoom and the other apps and picking up the phone, I've had trouble getting through on my phone now, calling people sometimes. I think the tower's been so busy because people are actually calling people as opposed to texting.
yeah, yeah. You're not the first one I've heard say that. So,
Right,
yeah,
right. So, you know, just keep in touch with everybody you know. People you don't know that well, make sure that they're good, make sure that they're safe, and help out your local community as much as you can. That's the other
yeah,
thing. If you're young, if you're healthy, and you can help out your local community, be it you know the emergency like hospital workers or whatever. I mean, you know, I noticed one of the guys that compete with on some jobs, Build It by Design. They had an awesome post on LinkedIn saying, you know what, now's the time if you can, please send over food to your. But it's like that's the kind of engagement that you want, you know, that
yeah,
you want to see. Like that's the important stuff right now is making sure that our frontline workers are also well protected and
yeah.
taken care of.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it is more important now than ever to work together. And I think ultimately the phenomenon that you're describing about, people having a long memory, well, I think that the way that it might show itself is that, right now is a chance for us to recreate a sense of community that we kind of lost. And you get to choose now whether to become a part of that or to remove yourself from it.
Right.
And, when this is all said and done, if you're not part of that community, then, that's where it's going to hurt you.
It's almost like taking friends off your Facebook list that you haven't talked
Yeah.
to in a while.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
who are important, who are not, right? Like
Right.
these are the people I want to keep in touch with,
Yeah, for sure.
more so than because now we have the time, right? So
For
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
I just want to end with, is it possible for you to let me know where everybody can find you online, the best place to contact you, and then I can put it in the show notes for them to
Oh
click
yeah,
in touch?
yeah. Best place. I mean, you can go on LinkedIn,
Okay.
Rahul Faria. You can go on One Oak. Actually, I don't have a link to me, but you can send me an email at one. Well, my first name Rahul
Yeah.
RAHUL at one-oak.ca.
Okay.
That's the best one.
Okay.
You know, I don't mind talking to people, talking to students, whoever's trying to get in, trying to navigate this. Like
Okay.
I said, I don't know everything. I'm trying to figure it out too. And
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
hoping some of the decisions I'm making are sticking.
Yeah.
You never
It
know.
seems like you're doing a good job. I'm quite impressed. Are you on Instagram, Twitter, anything like that, or no?
I'm on Instagram, one oak underscore construction. I think
Okay.
I have a personal one too. My
Okay.
first and last name as well.
Amazing.
Not so much on Twitter.
Okay.
I'm actually
That's good. Stay
even
off
though I'm
there. It's toxic.
even though I'm a younger guy,
Yeah.
I'm only just getting into this social media stuff and posting and stuff like
Yeah.
that. It still seems foreign to me, but I mean nowadays you can find anybody, right? But yeah, LinkedIn, email address, even Instagramming, and go check us out, see what we're
Okay.
doing, and away we go. Yeah,
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time and insight. I really appreciate it. And I think it's going to
no
bring
problem,
a lot of value to a lot of people. So I really
no
appreciate you taking the
problem,
time out of your day.
not a problem. You have a good day too, Dario.
Thanks, man. You too.
Ciao.